Director of CRMCS, which is one of our sponsors for today, and he's going to teach us how to be superhuman lawyers.
Thank you very much. There we go. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you've had a great day so far. Obviously, I've been around technology sector for a while, so I appreciate everyone talks about AI and machine learning. But I think now, obviously, it's become particularly a vogue. It's something I really wanted to talk about. So, and look at really what the definition of an augmented human is these days, what brings extra to what we do, and really, how does that make us a superhuman lawyer? So without any further ado, really a bit about myself, but I'll skip mostly over that and go, I've worked in technology my entire life. I started, like a lot of people in my sector, the real hardcore as it were, I started cutting code from the age of 6. So they got me at a very early age. Every now and again I've sort of stepped into business consultancy or now running my own business and trying to get away from the hardcore code, but it always just sucks me back in. And I feel quite relieved nowadays because when people jump forward and go, I'm not technical, mate, I'm like, no, I am technical. And then from that, I've seen technology tools change massively over the time I've been in the industry. For me, it's all about levels of abstraction, which is very much a computer science term of where you're at. Obviously, I don't write ones and zeros. I'm not Skynet yet. But what I do is I work with different tools, and I've over the years built my own tools, particularly in my sector of expertise, and done a huge amount with those tools to effectively become a bit more than I actually am. I can do things a lot quicker because of the experience that I've gained on that. And that gives me a bit of an insight. You can call it low code, you can call it automated development, there's tools for these things, or indeed, you can call it AI in some ways. But just to throw something out to the audience, I imagine, who here has experimented with GPT? Raise hands. Loads of people. It's great, isn't it? It's kind of strange. You kind of ask it questions, and it's kind of a computer system, but it's not. But just to move on, next one there. Oh, hello. There we go. Who's used it to write any source code? Is there anybody? There we go. I'd ask you what it was for. For me, I've used it to write a bit of integration with Typeform, do a few bits with it. And what I've found with it, it's quite an interesting experience. It's quite an interesting one to see and just go, most developers have been doing this for years. We go and Google stuff, and we go and give me some code that I want, all copy and paste, great, quid's in. But you can get ChatGPT to do that for you now, and it writes a whole load of code, and you're like, was that any good? And what I've sort of found with it is, then I see these panicked YouTube videos, or not panicked, and they're usually outside my sector, to be honest, because software developers aren't going to put themselves out of jobs. But usually people outside my sector don't go into software development. Just give me out. There's no jobs for it in a few years. And similar here, where I'm a bit more outside my comfort zone, media articles, newspapers, don't go into any of that because there won't be a job. ChatGPT will be doing anything. Take a press release, feed it through, boom, you've got an article there. But is that really true? Am I going to be out of job? Loads of people are going to be out of jobs. And obviously, your middle sector of people, your professional industries, are they going to be out of job? AI is not going to come along and automate factories, well, more than it already does. It's not going to replace people at the top end, but is it going to replace a whole middle strain of jobs? And that seems to be a very popular sort of theory at the moment that it will. But really, what does it mean for us when we're building new technology, and what does it mean for yourselves when you're building cases, precedents, e-discovery, that kind of thing? And then really, I think one thing here, I've been going to loads of conferences where people will go, it's AI, and I would rock up in an awkward squad person where I go, is it AI or is it machine learning? And people look at me a bit blankly, like I'd said the bad word. And it was almost always machine learning, historically. But obviously ChatGPT is the first thing I've looked at it and gone, bloody hell, it's actually proper AI. But really, I think it's always worth looking at that, of going, what's the difference between these things? AI is ultimately a lot of technology that solves problems, but doesn't know what the problem is yet. We're not telling it what the problem is. I mean, we are when we talk to it, but when someone's built that, they don't know what the problem is yet, which is kind of a crucial distinction. Machine learning, when I've built machine learning, because I've done quite a lot of it, you give it a problem, you know the end problem you're trying to solve at the time you're building it. And then you've got the old school way, which I do loads of with document management, keyword analysis, wording, metrics, that kind of thing, algorithms basically. It's not terrible. It's not learning itself. It's not using loads of data. It's just doing what it's told. And that tends to be the three breakdowns there, really, between what's AI, what's machine learning, and what's just standard business logic, however complicated it might be. And really, AI is exactly that. It's the specification of using existing data to solve problems that we don't know what is yet. And ultimately, then it's going to use a whole lot of data from today to go on solve problems that's coming into it, but it won't know what those problems are. And one of the weird things about ChatGPT when you're using it to write source code, which you might have experienced, is you ask it to write a load of code and you go, that bit doesn't look right. And so you go, is that right? It doesn't look there. Do you need a semicolon there or some such? And it goes, yeah, sorry, I got that bit wrong. Should be a semicolon there. And you're like, all right, so it's not exactly accurate, and you do need to know how to spot the mistakes on it. It's kind of like working for junior developer or somebody, or you're going, have you got that bit right? Oh yeah, no, you've just redone it. No, it's right now, great. It's quite an interesting one of the human element there of solving the problem, but then kind of coaxing it into that solution over time. But it can solve problems with today's world to do it. But what does that really mean? It also means that essentially it's pulling in existing practices and existing ways of working to go and solve those problems. So what it is doing is it's soaking up what the world does today to then give you a solution. And you can probably spot here where the problem is and where my big thesis here really is. What is it actually doing? It is giving you a view of the world today. It is not giving you a world of tomorrow. It is great at what it does, but it's not searching out an answer to a problem. It's kind of giving you answers that already exist. And what you have to worry about a little bit is the stock content that's going into that. I do fear there might be a world in a few years where every marketing press release or every newspaper article reads exactly the same because they're all being produced from the same data. And guess what? They're all learning from each other, so they're reinforcing all the existing things that they've already learned. It's like asking somebody to learn the same thing over and over again. We kind of are programming around the world as it is today. And so it's useful, but it is different. It is not the same as technology always is. And I think for yourselves, obviously I come from this very much technological background, but I see it when it's tuning out that source code. It's code in a certain style, a certain format. It's very much predictable in what it's doing. And I think that's the huge risk of AI. And obviously bits of this get talked about, establishing existing biases in its results. But it's not just that for me. It's also the fact that the way it's working is fundamentally the way that everybody's working already. And that has a certain level of danger to it. Because I look at it and go, well, I'll tell you what, if you were doing this 20 years ago, if AI was on the scene 20 years ago, and I said, you know what, I want you to do this, tell you what, I want you to go and produce me a sitcom, it's going to look a lot like that. It's going to look like Friends. There's a whole load of stuff in there, and it's going to go, that was amazingly successful, go and do more of that. Well, if you look at everything that's come along after Friends, they tend to be a bit different. It's not just the same thing done over and over again. And there's certain other entertainment franchises that could probably remain nameless. They're starting to look a little bit like that. They kind of feel sometimes that maybe AI is churning out the results in that one. Because AI, just like the internet, just like forums, it's kind of feeding itself. It's like a snake eating itself a little bit, and how dangerous that might become. And for yourselves, AI is very much reflecting that world. It's going, what is going on, what has been going on, I'm then going to give you those same answers to the same problem. You've got very much a technology concept, which that levels of abstraction is similar to, the grey goo theory almost. It's technology copying itself over and over again until the entire world is taken over by something that looks exactly the way it started. And that, I think for yourselves in the legal industry, will be a huge risk of relying too much on AI. It can only tell you the things that you kind of already know in a certain way. And I think that it's a great tool. Obviously, there's massive power in this. It can automate certain jobs. There's no getting away from that. It can make certain tasks quicker. You can do things with this. But there's a huge danger there, and it's not the danger that I think half the media seems obsessed with, which is it's going to become Skynet, take over and rain down nuclear missiles or something like that. It's more that it's so easy to use, it's so accessible to get what you want out of it, that you always lean towards that rather than write something new, rather than maybe put that level of thought in stuff. Everyone relies on you to be so productive that that's your baseline, and therefore some of the imagination has gone, some of the thinking has gone, and some of the problem solving has gone. And I think obviously in the legal industry particularly, that runs huge risks where precedent becomes law, and law is always precedent. If you go back to all the social norms, all the things that we would expect in something like Friends, it's very different now, and people are always usually spotting that out, and how much we embed those social norms versus go somewhere new. Because I think as when I was really running through this information with some of my colleagues, because what is in the present is inevitably going to become the past. Where is innovation going to come from if everything you do is focused purely on the present? And that knowledge of the future, that innovation, is going to come from people. It won't necessarily come from AI or a certain amount of learning on existing data. So all of that, how can you actually become a superhuman lawyer? How can you augment yourself in the way that I was describing earlier and succeed in this world without, potentially always relying on AI? And really what I was thinking about this when I've been looking at sort of my world, consultancy, technology and that kind of thing, ultimately there's a huge amount of data that almost all of my clients don't use. And then when I started to think about this from a client perspective, I was like, well, do we do this? Does my company do all this? And I was like, actually, there's quite a lot of stuff we don't do. And I don't know there's that many technology consultants do it as well. The way to avoid a lot of the problems I think there is looking at data and looking at it and then making human decisions off that data. Not looking at what the data tells you, but looking at what problems you could go and solve from that, what you can infer from that data. Because that's what the human mind can do, that a lot of the time the machine mind can't. The machine mind can make predictions, AI can use that, but ultimately it can't do the imaginative sorts of thinking that we often need to do. And so really using that as an example, in my sector, there's loads and loads of talk about user adoption. If you ever talk to any CRM person, any computer person, it's all about user adoption. It's strategy here, it's strategy there. But it's people like me have been talking about it for years. But how much user adoption do we actually do? Well, we have access to usually all the data about whether systems are being adopted. But so often in my sector, we leave it to the client. We go and have a chat with the client. We do account management with them and go, how's it going? How do you feel about this system? How much in terms of actual numbers is it being used? Well, we have access to all the data, almost always. I mean, we've not got backdoors or anything, but we always usually have access to it, but we very rarely use it. I'd say in my world with consultancies, they're so relieved when they've got a project over the line, how much they actually look at that user adoption data, put it in metrics, and then not just have a look at it out of interest or send it to the client, but actually feed it to an account management team and actually put that to use. Because I would say my industry, certainly in the Microsoft consultancy industry, it's pretty rare, despite how much we talk about it. And really, it's a good solid look of, right, how can you use that data, but use it in human ways, and ideally pass that data to non-techies who can then go and use useful insights from that data and then actually make human decisions off the back of it. And I think that is one solid way that people can really augment themselves effectively in terms of looking into the future and not just relying on technology and AI to go into that future and go, please just go and tell me everything I need to know. And I think that is probably one of the biggest things now with data and how to put data to use to really succeed. Right, and as I said, I've been going to quite a few tech conferences over the last few years, COVID permitting, and I've seen this hammering over and over again of that buzzword. I mean, blockchain, which cropped up in the panel earlier, is another one which I think I've dodged over the last few days, but it usually crops up. But they're looking at different technology products, but really, I think there's a huge danger, having seen ChatGPT put to use, having used it myself, that those established working practices can be firmly embedded rather than serious, genuine problem solving. And I think that's where that flow of data from the techie to sort of the mid-level techies to the actual business end, I think is an absolutely brilliant way to stop that happening. So you can still augment what you do, but without AI coming in and being a magic buzzword that seemingly fixes everything. And so really, just labouring that point, really, the future of solutions in my industry, my sort of buzzword really is I spend a lot of time looking at technology and sociology and the technological impacts on sociology. And really, that will probably be where the solutions of tomorrow come from. It's human plus data. When we're looking at it, it'll be precedent plus looking at what the future is, taking in where law and where culture is actually moving to, not just exactly where it is today, and learning from existing data. And really, I wanted to sort of put a little bit of a spin on that, obviously talking about superhuman lawyer, from sort of putting my spin on it. If you look at sort of where I'm going with that, really, is you've got sort of different sort of superheroes out there, but really what you're looking at is don't be more superhero, be more human. And if you know your Marvel, you'll know where I'm going with that one. You be more human in the way you operate. Yes, there's all sorts of technological gizmos that can help that, and there's loads of things there, but the human element is always the most important. Trying to be a superhero, and I see loads of developers trying to be superheroes in loads of different ways. Trying to be a superhero isn't always the right way to do it. Think of the human side of it, and then think of what you can boost that human side of it, rather than skipping a technological solution to go and do everything for me. Otherwise, I feel that a lot of AI-produced content will go the way of email marketing these days. There's millions of emails, so there's no emails. There's millions of articles produced by ChatGPT, so there's no articles really, because they're all the same thing. And this is very much the same in my industry with the technical and the code. And as I said, obviously I'm more on the technical side of things than on the legal side of things, but I think all of that applies from my experience in the sector to legal and how we do these things, not just to those mid-level professional services jobs and code development that is more things that I know inside out. And for me, that pretty much wraps me up. And that's really, I think, when I've been going through machine learning, AI all these years, that's been bubbling away in the back of my head. And so really what I wanted is to borrow 15 minutes of your time and go through. Thank you very much.